Just verify that it is. Just verify that it. All right, we are live. Okay. So the years this was 2 years ago, trying to at AT&T or SBC Global Yahoo, they said you need to make a password and it says use these one of these four special characters. And then you go to the next screen and it says you can't use one of those special characters that they said. So it's my recommendation on passwords is, you know, uh, it's the old password thing I've done is I always recommend you make a password that the first two or three letters of the password are the website you're at. For instance, if you're at American Airlines, you do capital A, lowercase m, lowercase e. And that way you always know where you are. You don't have to, this protocol will make it so you don't have to write anything down. Now, obviously, if I go to American Express, it would be the same beginning part. That's no big deal. And then in the middle part of the password, which is your consistent part of the password, let's just say it's all lowercase MacNexus. Okay. And then after that, you put in an integer, a number. And after that, you can use one or more special characters. So we're going to talk through this and I'm going to tell you the special characters. So again, if we were making up a password for American Airlines, it would be capital A, and then your computer or your iPhone automatically goes to lowercase ME, and then MacNexus, all lowercase, then a number. And think about on your iPhone, you've just switched to your number pad right now. And that's why the number's at the end, because then you're not switching back and forth on the keyboards on your iPhone. And then after that, you want it to be one of three special characters. Never make it a period, because when you write your password down, you don't know if it's really a period or not. Don't make it a number sign, the hashtag, because the problem with the hashtag is on your iPhone, it's a whole nother screen deeper. So why make that difficult? But I recommend an exclamation mark, a question mark, or a dollar sign, because those are all on your number pad on your phone. And you can use one or more of those. And so when you think about it, you have one password you use everywhere that's MacNexus, and then a number, and then if you want a special character or two, and then the beginning part is a prefix, and it just is based on whatever website you're at. If you're at Wells Fargo, it would be capital W, lowercase e, L, and then MacNexus and the rest of your password. That will be fairly secure. Another way to do passwords is two different words. Uh, let's say Bambi Godzilla, for instance, or something like that. But, those can be found in a dictionary and those aren't quite as safe. But if you do this little protocol, you can make your password very secure. Another way to do it is instead of the A in MacNexus being an A, you can make it an @ sign. But my recommendation is whatever you do, make it be consistent. Because what happens if you need to log in and you don't have your password sheet with you, or don't have access to notes, and go from there. And I'm finding more and more websites. I always look at what Apple requires for a password as kind of the default, but you need to go more. Apple's requirement says it has to be 8 characters or more. Now, again, if you do way too many characters, yeah, it's going to be really secure, but you're going to blow it every time you go to do it. And remember, use the built-in password manager, and then you don't have to fill it in, and you can use the fingerprint reader or your Face ID. But anyway, Apple's criteria is 8 characters or more, at least one capital and one lowercase letter, at least one number. And there was no requirement for a special character. But if your password is too weak, let's say your password was fluffy1 or something, well, that's not quite air carriers. Fluffy123, let's say your cat's name, that Apple may, for Apple's purposes, they may say that's too simplistic. You need to make it more complex before we will accept it. So I'm against Apple's secure password that they fill in. And the reason for it is, if you remember, I was on a Viking ship that got hit by a rogue wave, and 26 of us in the middle of the night had to evacuate our cabin. I had my stuff with me because my cabin didn't flood very bad. But people that left and it's 10:30 at night, the people in the cabin 2 away from me, they got out of their cabin with one bathrobe between both of them. So, they've got to go up, and now they can't get back into their room and get their stuff for 5 days. They're needing to do email and all that. And for instance, if you need to get into your Apple ID or something like that, they have no way to get in there. Now, I recommend that you keep your passwords in Apple Notes and you lock that note. And then all you need to do is have access to your Apple ID account. And your Apple ID account is very important to have a good secure password, but you will never remember what that Apple generated password is. And since you can't get into your account, it's not going to autofill for you. So it's important to have a password you can remember to get into, because then you can get into Notes from iCloud and you can then find your other passwords. So your Apple ID has to be very memorable. And if you use the protocol I just told you, while it's not going to be as secure as the Apple made up password, you're going to easily be able to remember it because it's APPL MacNexus 123 exclamation mark. Whatever it is you do, and be consistent with it. Does that make sense? And I know it doesn't answer your question, but I'm just scared of those passwords that I can't do. I mean, because you can't always have access to that stuff.
Well, I use the Pete Losey system, the first letters of a song with the number, and then the special character required by the website.
And you do that everywhere?
No, that's special for this. So
yeah, but see, what I'm saying is I use this everywhere.
I get your universality.
And I know where I am. I always know what website I'm at. So I can have because you never want to use the same password everywhere, because then the Pizza Hut delivery driver, because to sign on to Pizza Hut, you use your email address and a password. And if you use the same password for your Pizza Hut that you use for email, if somebody hacks into their system, they then have the password for your email. So that's the house of cards. So I totally recommend this. And if you go back, I have this recorded, my whole password presentation. And I just think security is only good if you can access what you need to access.
Yeah, well, I think I, like Al, enjoy the fingerprint access too much. And that always works, but I
Well,
haven't been hit
but
by
wait a
a
minute.
rogue
But
wave yet.
that's because your passwords get stored. But what happens if you can't get into your computer and you need to do something else? I mean,
Yeah,
you have to think about the eventuality of this. I mean, there are people in the Paradise Fire that had 8 minutes to get out of their house. I know some people that didn't even get out with their iPhones. So then you go and you get a brand new iPhone and you need to log into your Apple ID, and there's no way to get your Apple ID password. So, I use the built-in fingerprint reader and let it fill in. I think the best thing they do is like for the passcode on the iPhone where it uses Face ID or on the fingerprint reader, the beauty is whenever you reboot, it requires you to put in your particular passcode for that device, not a password, but a passcode. And that's really good because that way you do it often enough that you still remember what it is.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, I would just hope, and I just wondered if maybe you could confirm as a backup, if the dire situation were to occur, everything's lost, I go to an Apple store or Best Buy, wherever, get the new Apple iPhone or get any Apple device phone. And could I just ask someone at that store, that retailer, whichever store it might be, to, hey, can I use your computer, any computer? And I would have the wherewithal to remember at least one password and log into the Apple iCloud. Does passwords work on iCloud that I could then obtain my other passwords?
Yes, they're stored on the cloud, first of all.
Okay.
So what would happen is you would get your new phone, and to get your new phone to activate it, you need to be able to sign into your Apple account. And the problem is then they forget their password and they make a whole new Apple account. Well, that Apple account's going to screw everything up because it's not your old Apple account. And it's very frustrating. That's why never go to like a phone carrier where they're just trying to get you out the door. Oh, they forgot their password. Screw them. We'll make a brand new Apple account for them. I mean, that creates so much havoc. It's terrible. But on the phone, you would sign in, and once you sign in, all your passwords populate across because they're stored securely on the cloud. And if you feel like you need to write your passwords down, you can create a note, and notes are accessible in the iCloud also. And your note is locked. And I always tell people when you lock a note, make it be the same 4 or 6 digits you use to unlock your phone because you're never going to forget those. And it does it with Face ID, it'll unlock it anyway. But no, I think, and again, think about it, and it used to be a pain in the ass. That's why we never used to do full restores. You would always migrate over. Once they finally let our passwords be stored on the cloud, that really has solved everything. I mean, you can do an erase and install unlike what you used to be able to, because the biggest thing was passwords. And you guys, there's progress being made. You don't realize it, but many of the places you sign in now, they're not even asking for your password. They're using what's called a pass key. So in other words, they're saying that you have already authorized that it's your phone. So for us to access an iPhone, we have to have a passcode or a biometric entry of Face ID or Touch ID. And then what's happening is now that phone is okay. We've authorized this phone. And when you log into Amazon or you log into Google, it's no longer using a password. It's saying, oh, we have verified that that phone is that person's phone and they're using that. And that's what a passkey is. And you don't even realize it because it's kind of seamless and behind the scenes. I'm going to be, I may do this in a presentation coming up because later this month I'm doing it oh no, next month for the Apple user group out here. And I'll have a presentation about security and passkeys and everything. But it looked at one time like it was going to be voice ID, but that just kind of gone away because your voice print is as unique as your fingerprint, but that's it. But I highly encourage you to do additional special characters at the end, and that will further enhance how secure your password is. So, Harmon, I hope that answers it for you. And I ever since I came up with this little protocol, it's made my life easier because I know it's going to be kind of one of three passwords.
Okay, and I go into passwords and remove the Apple generated strong password and put in one that matches this system.
I'm glad you asked it and asked that way. And here's the deal. Just like keychain access used to be, the new password program, do not go in there and manage it manually because you'll mess it up. Treat it as read only, absolutely. And what you need to do is, if you go to apple.com or go to iCloud.com or id.apple.com and you change your password in there, once you're done, it will say, do you want to update your password? And what that means is it will take that new password and replace the old password with the one you just put in passwords. You want the computer or your device to handle it because it does it correctly. Now, I take it one step further. I would immediately log out and then log back in and see if it fills in the correct password. And if it doesn't, I then put in the new password and then tell it to update. And again, log out again and come back. I want to make sure it's in there and stored correctly, and it will replace the old one. But you have to go into the location first and change your password there before you can let it be changed anywhere else. And because the Apple one is so important, just like that and a few of your email ones, I absolutely would update it in notes just so I have that just in case. So,
And I think you need to emphasize that what you just said at the end is you have to go to the website first and change it, and then make sure it's updated in your passwords.
absolutely.
Because yeah,
And then you can go check because you're always wondering, you can go check passwords and see if it got updated. And it used to be that the keychain would have multiple versions of your password, but the new passwords app is pretty smart. And the best thing is when you go into the passwords app, it'll say, oh, yeah, you updated this on July 1st, 2024, So it's made password management considerably easier. And again, think about how nice and slick it is with the actual Touch ID on the keyboard now. So, or Face ID. So I hope that clears it up. And I think it was great. And that's why I wanted to record it because, you know, like the title of my upcoming work for out here is passwords, and then I have a whole bunch of special characters to look like someone cursing in the comics. And so it says if and then passwords, because that's it. I have one client who finally just said her password is F this something, and that's her password. And she always remembers it because the passwords are so tough. Anyway, all right, let's move on. Go ahead, Randy.
Okay, a new subject. Thank you. Um, Under blocked contacts, this would be a wish list. It's not like the click and clack show where they say stump to stump. So this is not
Tom and
designed to
Ray.
stump, but this is one I don't know how to do, and I don't expect anyone else to know how to do. But in my wish blocked contacts, do the search and your ID and everything, blocked contacts. Is there a way I'd sure like to find out if you could either go alphabetical order or numeric order. It just seems like and I won't show it on the screen because you're recording, but it just seems like it's in a random order, probably in the order that I added blocked contacts, both phone numbers and emails all show up. Is there a way to put them in some type of ascending, descending order? We'll wait till a Wednesday presentation next.
No. And and you're why tell me why you would want it to be alphabetical.
Well, because I'm not the smartest guy on this Zoomcast, and I had unfortunately unknowingly blocked myself one time. And
Well, then you just do a search for your number.
I
Well, now,
tried.
yeah. Well, Randy, I think you shouldn't call yourself, okay? I think it's kind of like there must be more hours in your day than there are in mine.
Yeah, 25.
Yeah. And you want to burn those up chasing down your block contact. No, it's tough.
Yeah.
And yeah, there might be a way they could do it, but I really think I don't know what that would add to it, because it's just if it's in there, it's only if you get a problematic one. And I can't even remember if I don't even think you can search. So yeah, no, it's not likely to happen. So I think I mean, you could unblock them all and do that, but no, I mean,
How many do you have, Randy?
Well, uh,
well, if they were alphabetical, he could tell us.
oh gee, look at it. It's just each one is a scroll. It's just
What if
Oh,
you put them into a group in like on when you're on your desktop or whatever, you put them into a group and then you can choose to do it, right?
good. That
well, no, I don't think block contacts show up on your contacts on the computer.
Oh,
oh,
okay. I don't,
Yeah, block contacts. In fact, I'm not even positive if they go across devices.
oh.
So,
well, that would be an interesting thing to try, Randy. See if they're
yeah,
on
Randy,
desktop.
in one of those extra hours, go ahead and see if it shows up on your iPad and report back, okay?
I'll do it next time daylight savings time comes along where we get
Yeah, you're going to
an
do it on the
hour.
30th of February.
Good, yeah. 29.
All right. I'm about to bring up my screen here and we'll get started. As we go through this, you guys, if there's any questions at all, the beginning portion will be redundant of what we did on the Wednesday. Hang on here. Full screen. All right. We will talk a little bit about Apple. Oh, let me get my cursor. There we go. All right. We're going to talk a little bit about Apple Intelligence later on. And this is a chart. I'm just going to go through this quick. It was in the last one. There are many different, we'll call them just AI, and I'll go into details on it. But there's lots of different ones, and this is really useful to figure what ones are good for other things. And there's not one AI that fits them all, because AI can be many different things, like content creation, like writing assistants, ChatGPT and Claude. Well, now we also have built um, into our pages, numbers, and Keynote is our own writing assistant, or what they call writing tools, and it actually uses the back end of ChatGPT. Then there's others that are good at data analysis. Perplexity and Grok are really good at that. Um, Coding and development, I mean, that's probably not much for here, but the old computer programmers, I mean, AI is making their job a lot easier, and it kind of tests everything. Education and learning. So like um, you want to learn how to use Pages, for instance, or things like that. Incredible. Then there's other tools like Google Translate, or Duolingo now has AI. So language learning or language translations. Um, uh, let's business optimization. You can take a work process, and you could say, well, what do I need to do here? And it builds flow charts and things like that. Customer service, creative problem solving. In other words, you know how a group can sometimes come up with a better idea than one individual can, and you bang it around and stuff. Well, AI can do that same kind of thing. Personal productivity, task management, and also things like your to-do lists, and having it do some prioritizing, health tracking. That's incredible. Um, Also, it can. There already is there in medicine. Think about interactivity that we have between certain medications that have problems with other medications. That's all really done in there. Translation, and then of course we talked about healthcare and science. So this is just kind of just some notes they had about it, and our Amazon devices are starting to do it. OpenAI, there's a whole bunch. Um, Speaking of translation, the AirPods will soon be able to do live translation of conversations. Your iPhone can do it with Google Translate and with the S word on the Apple, SIRI, and it can do live translation. What that does, it's called conversational mode. So it's very, very helpful and useful. My favorite is Grok, and we're going to work on it here in a little bit to do it. It's come back really well, but it's not very good for doing videos and pictures. It's really good for text and also for current stuff, because it's leveraging X.com, which is the old Twitter, because it has become the news aggregator for everything. And the best thing is, while most large language models like Chat GPT and stuff, they're old. They're back about 3 months or so, because that's when they basically get all that data. So they're not up to date for current events. So think of them more like an encyclopedia that was published 3 months ago, whereas with Grok, it uses everything that's been published before, but now it's using more current stuff. And I thought this was really interesting. Dennis Irwin, who gave me permission to put this on here, he was doing this, and he was using Microsoft Word, and wanted to find out about doing odd and even numbered pages. And so Microsoft's own Copilot, which is an offshoot of Chat GPT, sorry, I don't understand, can you rephrase? And he did a copy and paste to the exact same one, and it worked very well in these others. And that's actually a print thing, so margin mirroring. So I'm glad that worked out. And it's little things like that that really do. I'll give you an example. I recently was up in Bend, Oregon. We took I organized a trip of 26 people from our Lincoln Hills Ski Club, of which 25% were non-skiers. And there was all kinds of stuff going on, but we had a lunar eclipse up there at the same time, a full lunar eclipse. And so I went to Grok and I said, find a location near Bend, Oregon in March that I can photograph the full lunar eclipse with mobility issues, because this inflammatory disease thing I have limits me to about 100 yards. So I couldn't go hike to a peak to go see it or things like that. So I put all that in and it came up with 4 locations and they were great. And then what I had to do is I used another thing called Open Snow, and I can see where the clouds, it was very cloudy at the time. And I, of the 4 areas, I picked one that looked, the forecast was for less cloudiness because there's no reason to do that. So I shot a little bit of Milky Way. There wasn't much Milky Way, but I was able to shoot the eclipse and it was pretty cool. So you can use these for many things. But I wanted, we're not going to put the cart before the horse. I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and kind of where it started because it's a name that gets bandied about and it's been around for a long time. And believe it or not, when I first put this together, I actually had ChatGPT help me get the information. It was introduced by Alan Turing, who's very popular. I mean, first of all, an incredible computer scientist back in the 50s. And I don't know if you've ever heard what the Turing test was. The Turing test is where you do like these little, you know, show how many pictures in this picture is a motorcycle and things like that. And it was the ultimate test to determine between whether it's a computer you're talking to or a real person. And so, because of that, AI, or at that time they called it artificial intelligence, he was one of the ones that coined that term. So now let's put this in perspective. In the 50s, there was I Love Lucy, civil rights, the Cold War, the Korean War, the rise of Elvis, Sputnik was launched, and Queen Elizabeth II. So in 1956 is when it was coined, and this was at a conference at Dartmouth. And the whole artificial intelligence just means it's artificial because it's intelligence from a computer. So you put information in a computer and you get it out. Like I remember in a summer school class in 73, between my junior and senior year, we we had this big computer the size of a refrigerator that had flashing lights on it at Cordova High School. And we didn't use punch cards. It was like a ticker tape. It had these holes in it. And so I developed, because I was so into skiing at the time, I wanted to find out if the K24 competition or the Dynamic VR17 ski was going to be better for what I wanted. And what it was is there were a whole bunch of there was the ski magazines had done tests on all these skis, and they had, this is high speed carving, this one gives very smooth, this one does well in this. And so it was a 1 through 5 scale on these skis. And so what I wanted the computer to do was to analyze of what the criteria I wanted on a ski and where it rated versus each other on this. And admittedly, it was a bit biased because I kind of knew I wanted the VR17. So, of course, that's, yeah, what the result came out. But the little ticker tape went in and it did it. Now, that computer was not doing artificial intelligence. That was simply crunching numbers and coming up with a result. So that wasn't artificial intelligence. What artificial intelligence is more machine learning. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to say, also in the 1950s, in fact, 1956, yours truly in the center of the picture on the left, I guess I'm giving mom flowers or something there. And that's me on the right with my ears that stuck out. And I looked just like Opie from Andy of Mayberry, RFD. So in the 50s and 60s, the early AI research, and what they talk about here is symbolic reasoning. So, in other words, yeah, the computer can spit out numeric results and find out it's essentially a fancy electronic calculator. But they wanted to see if they could get something where they could do, you know, if you think about it, you know, there's math, and then there were the old written math problems that we used to get. They were on the SAT tests, and you would have these, you know, if a train's traveling this distance at this speed, how will it, you know, all this other stuff. So they were just starting to get it to be able to solve those kinds of problems. So again, this is the 50s, mid 50s into the 60s. And that would be, it wasn't as we know AI is now. It's really just kind of asking questions that aren't just simply arithmetic formulas. Um, then a little bit beyond that, it's starting to use what's called natural language. So now it's, you could ask the computer, and I hate to do it numerically, but what is 3 plus 3 divided by something? You know, and of course you need the parentheses. But that is like, it would be early Google type search, like um, give me an apple pie recipe. So natural language, being able to ask a question, because before in a computer, you had to know programming language. You would have it, you would ask the question in some generic programming language. Well, now, hey, let's start doing it with your own natural language. And I remember back in the early days of the internet, there was Google did something when Google was fairly early. And back before we had smartphones, when we had flip phones, you know, you used to pay a lot of money to call 911, not 911, what was it, 411 for directory information. The cell phone carriers charge like $1 a call for that. So Google came out with a number you could call, and you would ask for a number. You would visibly say, give me the phone number for Pizza Hut in Rancho Cordova, let's just say. Well, Google provided that for free. And what the ulterior motive was, Google was using that people asking those questions to learn how to do speech to text dictation. It was amazing. I mean, that was genius. So what they were doing is you would call up and it could figure out, well, that person might have said Pizza, but then they know, oh, they're saying Pizza Hut. So Google was using that to train its computer to know how to do speech to text dictation. Another really, really weird thing that happened at the same time is, and this is how brilliant Google was back in the day, Google was scanning, physically scanning all the old books and anything that was out of copyright and everything. And what happens is, if they're scanning an old book, and sometimes certain fonts don't print clearly, and like the letter R sometimes just doesn't look right, or there was a little bit of an ink smudge or something like that. So what Google said is, well, we're scanning all these books, and we don't want to have a bunch of people sitting there and trying to determine if that's an A or an R or another letter. So if you remember, we still do it when we go to websites. There are things called CAPTCHAs, CAPTCHA, where they say, this is a number and a letter and it's all weird. And those are designed so computers don't sign up for, let's say there's some new website out and they want you to join. Well, they want to make sure you're a real person, so somebody's not flooding them. So you have to, and it's really hard to read those little letters and stuff, but a human can read it and type it in, and that allows you to sign up for that thing. Like if you're doing Ticketmaster, things like that, because they don't want a computer signing in and overwhelming them. Well, one of the many with Google, what they did is they were doing these CAPTCHAs, and the first one was a real CAPTCHA. It was just a couple printed letters like ACE or something like that. And then there was a second picture that was one of these letters from the books that they're scanning that they couldn't determine if it was an R or an N. And so enough humans would say, oh, yeah, no, that's an N. And so therefore, that would go back to the book they scanned. And when they were digitizing it, they would know that that's now the letter N. So in other words, everybody was putting CAPTCHAs in, and they would read that, and the human eye and the human brain could differentiate that it was the letter, and that would go fix it in the digital book. That was an amazing thing back then. So anyway, computers now, the whole time that this is happening, yeah, research is getting better, computer programmers are getting better, but the big thing is computers are getting more powerful, because the power of the computer is the biggest thing. And there's Gordon Moore, there's Moore's law. And back in the day when semiconductors, which were the chips, went from tubes to chips, he was with Intel, and he made a rule, and it was that every 18 months, computers will double in speed. And Moore's law pretty much held true for decades. And it was really amazing that the power of the computer, or the speed of the computer, would double every 18 months. What happened later is when computers they couldn't get much faster, so Moore's law was not looking very good. What they ended up doing is now you would have two chips, and you would have dual chips like the Intel Core Duo and things like that. So in other words, you would improve the speed because you're putting a second chip there, and those two chips can work together. It'd be like having two engines on a car instead of just one engine. The car would have more horsepower for that. So Moore's law continued when they started doing multitasking and multiple chips. The machine, so machine learning is a whole different thing. Is the artificial intelligence is where the computer will start to make decisions, and I use this because when I did my initial Siri classes, I would demonstrate that we had speech to text dictation, and that was real easy. I could say, well, I need a jacket tonight, and it would type it out for me. But when you inflicted Siri, which was an early form of artificial intelligence, and was good when it was good, but it kind of didn't improve very much. But what happened there is if I would put into Siri and it said, well, I need a jacket tonight, it would come back, and rather than type that, it would tell me, oh, it's going to be 65 degrees and drizzle tonight. So it knew what I was asking was really, what's the weather, when I asked, will I need a jacket tonight? So that is early AI, in other words, taking what was said and interpreting it and coming back. But before it got there, it had to know and understand speech. So they started doing decision trees. Decision trees are just like flow charts and different things. But the big thing in the 80s is machine learning is where instead of a computer programmer teaching the machine what to do, the machine on its own, it's kind of like a teacher teaching a class, and then the class going out and learning further by what they were taught. So leading them down the path. It's kind of like and I mean, it's weird, but give somebody a fish, they got a fish, teach them to fish, they can get lots of fish. So the whole idea is the machine itself has been taught to recognize things and try to formulate its own decisions. And we all remember 2001, HAL, the Space Odyssey, and it went crazy because it could go out and it goes back against it. And that's the fear of AI and the fear of machine learning. But the deal with machine learning is, and I'll give you an example, the AI, the full self-driving AI that's in the Tesla, was originally lines of code. And those lines of code would say, okay, there's a red octagon shape on the right-hand side of the road that says the word stop on it. You should apply the brake. And so that had to be coded in to the software of each car. Well, the problem is, what happens if a truck has hit that sign and it's a little bent and it's no longer an octagon? Well, those are called edge cases. So then what happens is they have to give that information to the machine. Oh, well, if it's not exactly right, here's what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. So they were having to program it to do whatever it did. Well, more recently, what's happened because of machine learning, instead of writing all that code, they abandoned all that. And the computer in the car says it's got 8 cameras, and it looks at this sign, and so the controls of the car, there's 3 controls in the car: the brake, the accelerator, and the steering wheel. When we're in a car, we can do everything we need to do, because obviously when you're a computer, you don't need the radio or the heated seats or anything like that. But everything you need to do to control your car is left or right on the steering wheel, on or off on the brake, and on or off on the accelerator. So what they ended up doing that really was the success for full self-driving is they said, you know what? When the camera sees this red octagonal sign, they take their foot off the accelerator and they put their foot on the brake. And so now the machine, and then the machine says, oh, okay. And they learn that from all these millions of miles of input. And they find out that 99.9% of the drivers do this. So therefore, everybody driving a car is helping the machine learn it, and then the artificial intelligence is interpreting it. And that's on this huge computer cluster, a bunch of all computers all together. That, by the way, the big stymie on all this artificial intelligence is the amount of power that you need to run all these computers is a big issue in it. But then it comes back to the car, and a small amount of information gets to go to the small computer on the car, and the computer doesn't learn it. The big computer had learned everything, and then it gives the results. It says, in this scenario, here's what you do. And it's not constantly, when it's in the car, it's in the car. It's not constantly checking back with the other computer. Just like your iPhone gets updates, the car gets updates, and they update it. But in fact, the car is itself driving autonomously. So it's the easiest way I can represent how AI works. But again, machine learning, it's like those edge cases. Like, why did this person disengage? Well, a little video clip gets sent back to Tesla, and it looks at it and says, oh yeah, that octagon sign was bent a little bit and it didn't look like an octagon. So a person doesn't look at it because there's too much of it. There's 2 million miles of information coming in every day. And so the machine has been taught to look at it, and it can do it so quick, so efficiently. And it's data. Data is the king. So machine learning, as I just talked about, is taking these algorithms and teaching the machine to learn things. And that's where we'll talk later about robots. they're using humans they can mimic a human, and that's why the successful robots will be humanoid robots because they're uh, they're mimicking what a person does. Harmon, go ahead with your question.
So when the first cars were being driven by the control that the code gave them, the results of that driving was set up to feed the machine learning. But was that intentional? Did they know that by having a car that was responding to the code, they would gather enough information that that would allow the machine to learn?
Yes, but before that, there was actually a room full of people, and it was so controversial when they fired all those people because they weren't needed any longer. But there was a room. So what happens is if you're and I've been using some form of autopilot since October 2015 when it was first introduced. And believe me, the early stuff was really, really, really bad, and it was, it was bad. But what would happen is if you do a disengagement, in other words, if you turn it on, think of regular cruise control. You can turn it on and you can turn it off, and many times just by tapping the brake it disengages. Well, what it would do is, since you have these 8 cameras, if there was a disengagement, it would send that information anonymously to these guys that are looking at all these video clips and saying, well, why did this person disengage? And then those are called edge cases, and that improved it, because obviously if it's a pristine stop sign and everything's okay, but if it's a bent stop sign or it's leaning over or stuff like that, it has to learn those edge cases. And it's just like, you've seen the Google cars and the Apple cars that go around and they're using they do all the mapping for everything. Well, each of the Teslas, at the early time of this, there were less than 1 million cars on the road. And even if they didn't have, even if they weren't engaged in it, they could still use that to gather information. And so it was gathering all that data. And then what it was such an onerous task because they were getting so much data that they couldn't hire enough people to analyze this stuff manually. So because compute had gotten so good, so big, and machine learning became such an issue, they knew it was on the horizon, but it was really the breakthrough when the machine learning could process that data. And what you have to understand is it's processing video data, and that's a big deal because that's a huge thing. Is video, I mean, crunching numbers is one thing, but analyzing video, that's an amazing thing that it happened. And it would, you couldn't have done this 10 years ago. The computing power was not enough. Does that answer it for you, or is it still? Yeah, it's deliberate, and it's really the key to why it's successful is because they get so much data. So anyways, machine learning is that. And again, machine learning is because computers are so fast, they don't take coffee breaks, they work 24/7, and they're wicked fast, and they're getting faster all the time. And so the big thing that, like we talked about with Moore's law, the computer now has become what's called a cluster. And so what happens is all of these, let's think of Mac Minis, for instance. There are a bunch of Mac Minis that are all connected, and it becomes it's a larger brain by quantity because the one brain itself is limited on what it can do, and it's just giving its back out, and well, I guess the way to look at it is if if a if 50 good carpenters went to a house, that house could be built in 2 hours if they were good and knew what they did, right? Whereas if 3 carpenters build that house, it might take 2 weeks. So the idea is they're all doing it, and each one can work on parts of it, and it's multitasking. And then there's the whole new thing that's coming up, and I don't understand it all, is the whole quantum computing thing. But the machine learning, it's the machines are so fast and they're so accurate. And they don't need raises and they don't take vacations. This pretty much says it here. So experience things that the programmer couldn't have anticipated, and it's it's a different type of programmer. Programmers are you can't deviate from the programming because the actual code won't work then. But to program a computer to learn is really difficult, and it's a whole different thing. And the guys that are experts at it, like Andrew Karpathy and things like that, are just incredible. So, but and then and it's just there's no limit to it because you can always get bigger computers and faster computers. So here you for machine learning, so the training data. Now that would be all the input from the cars that are sending the information back to Tesla. So then they use an algorithm to analyze that, and then the machine learning happens, and then it comes up with a trained model. And what happens is another computer will test the trained model and obviously just verify results. And then the results out here, and then the results on the right are what gets sent back to the car. And it can be a smaller package, is how it works. So that's the process of machine learning. So we move all the way up to the 90s, which is what, 35 years ago now. And applications like speech recognition. Again, we talked earlier about speech to text and things like that. And in the early days, I can remember we all had Tom-Toms in our car. And I remember specifically, I was really excited because the Tom-Tom that I had for my GPS was going to start, you could speak to it. And how rudimentary it was back then is, I remember TomTom, which I think is Scandinavian based. It took them 18 months longer to roll it out in the US because even though we don't realize it, we have different dialects and accents here. And how rudimentary it was. And again, this will put it in perspective. With the TomTom Go, I remember I would have to put in, when I first fired it up, I would set it in and I would put US. And then I would put California. Okay. So it knew it was California, and it's got this database of these streets, which of course you had to update and pay to update and all that. But that was the start. So for what we can do now with our devices, we can go, give me directions to the Starbucks on Northgate Avenue or something like that. Well, back then, the way you had to do it is you had to fit its protocol. So the first thing you would say is it knew it was California in the US. So you would say Sacramento, and then it would come up and show Sacramento. And you would say Northgate Avenue, and then it would come up and do Northgate Avenue. And then you'd give it the actual street address. And that's how voice recognition worked. And what happened is, if you think about it, you've got the US database map, then you did California, so that lessened it. Then you did Sacramento. And when you said Northgate, it only had to look in the streets that it knew were in Sacramento. And then once it was on Northgate, you could put in the numeric one. And so, I mean, when we think back to that, and that was what, 35 years ago, it was so rudimentary. So the other thing is that they talked about data mining. So data mining is where, for instance, they just get a whole ton of information and they try to extract a ton of information is no good unless you can analyze it and figure out what it means. It'd be like a bunch of people taking a survey, and if it's millions of people and there's 60 questions, how do you analyze that? As the computational power increased, everything else increased. The data was bigger. They could store it, but it could really dig down in, and machine learning and then deep learning happened. And it's all about the computer power and the storage capacity. But remember, that data has to come from somewhere. For instance, in the self-driving case, it's all that video information of all those people out there encountering it, and it's the group source. So image recognition, you can take, in fact, now you can do it on the iPhone. You take a picture of a flower, it's going to tell you what flower it was. And kind of the beauty of it now is the internet started getting really good, and image recognition wouldn't be what's stored on the device. It can go out there on the internet and search for pictures that look like whatever flower or tree you're taking a picture of. So that's image recognition, kind of similar to facial recognition. Natural language processing, what that really means is just asking a question in normal language. And then I'm not a game player, but game playing, it was kind of a way, even the game developers can use it, like what would happen in this case or the other. And I'm not up to speed on that, so I can't really comment. Now, neural networks was what the machine learning kind of became. In other words, a neural network is meaning it starts to use how the brain does it. We have different sections in our brain, and there's pathways to different things, memories, whether you move your right hand, your left hand, and different things. So it looked at it, and when they say a neural network, if you think about these clusters of computers, well, this one little module or a full computer here might do speech recognition, and this other one does image recognition. This other one does crunching the numbers. I mean, it's again, we have many parts to our brains, and it's a whole neural network, and they connect together. That's what happened in these computers. And we're talking about spreading out, but it talks here about you can also stack computers up. That's like silicon chips. Silicon chips have many layers. Think of it as a multi-story building, and they have different places for that information to go. That's a perfect example of a neural network. So this is a circuit board chip on this side, and then this is your neural network doing it. So from the 20s to today, and believe me, AI is changing not monthly, but weekly. It's getting more powerful, and there's more ways to do it. It's incredible, it's encouraging, but it's also scary. And the whole thing with ethics. There are these, I mean, you can no longer believe what you see, even if it's videos. It's just amazing. But AI, it you know it's programmed to do certain things, and just like we have in society, there are some people more ethical than others. Some people that rob and cheat. Some people don't. Their AI is subject to how they were learned and how they were programmed. So at the for the time being, there's no guardrails on that, and that's kind of scary. But it's tough. And as we get older, we um, AI will help us a little bit on things like that. And this is just an example of think back to having to grab the old paper map out. And I mean, I've come so dependent on GPS that I'm not that good at directions anymore. So just some quick definitions. Chat GPT was from OpenAI and it was the original one. And GPT is generally pre-trained transformation. So you'll hear that a lot. Chat GPT is the Kleenex. It was the original of what's called the large language model. And OpenAI, which was founded as a nonprofit, funded by Elon Musk, because he saw this as a future. He wanted to open it up to everybody at no charge. Well, OpenAI changed when they started to change. He left because he wanted it to be for everybody. And the Sam Altman, one of the founders, was really good, but he decided instead of being a nonprofit, they were going to do it for profit. Microsoft is now a big shareholder, and so that's why he went away from OpenAI.
Basta la 12.
Can somebody monitor this co-host, please? The microphone there.
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you. So it continues, and the Microsoft is part of it. OpenAI's had some comings and goings, but they're very good, and it's where it started. And LLMs, which means large language models, and that's just meaning that when we give it voice and words and sentences, it's going to give you back that. And it's not an easy thing because letters are just letters, words are just words. But once you put them in a sentence and their thoughts, I mean, there's a lot going on there. And if you think back, you know how many times in the early translation things, different different languages put different things in different order. And so it really has to put it in the right order where, how if you do a literal translation of something, many times it's not in the right order and it means something different. So there's tons of data, articles, books, and AI is going out and curating the information that's out there. But if that information that it's curating, it's not necessarily biased, but the information itself, because there's so much of it out there, could possibly be biased. So AI can be manipulated a little bit on that, but it's usually due to the amount of data that it gets, and it will lean one way or the other. One problem with large language modules, and they're starting to fix it now, is if it doesn't know something, just like a kid in school that raises his hand and doesn't know the answer, when they make up something in AI, it's called a hallucination. And it happens, but most of the good AIs now are trying to kind of test itself so it won't put a hallucination out there. I remember one story, there's this one podcaster I listened to who was really good. He's a lemon law lawyer attorney, and he's really funny, but he gets all these pretty weird stories where this one attorney had AI write a brief for him, and it cited some case that wasn't a case. And when it got to the judge, and the judge is like, well, and the guy's like, well, gosh, I'm sorry, the AI did it. Well, no, when you put a brief to a judge, you're attesting that you researched it and that, and so it can get you in trouble. So just be forewarned and be careful. This is just kind of just a flow chart basically. And it's a little bit geeky in this, but there's all kinds of pathways it can take, and it's all a matter of problem solving is just looking at the questions and then analyzing them. So AGI, now this is the point that everybody seems to want to get to. In other words, artificial general intelligence. And this would essentially be the point where you can't differentiate whether it's a computer or a person. And in fact, if a computer can take the 100 smartest people in the world and combine them, you're going to have a computer that's smarter than any one of those 100 people. And so, but again, it's kind of like we all know people that are book smart, but common sense dumb, and vice versa. And so it can only go by what it's already learned. But if you can teach the computer to learn, it will learn and do stuff that we can't really have found out yet. And it's pretty weird and it's interesting. So just some examples. Manufacturing robots. I mean, if you think about this, in a steel mill where they're melting steel and everything else, manufacturing robots, first of all, they can do monotonous tasks very easily and repeatably without any problems, with very little errors because they check themselves. But secondly, in dangerous situations, those when they're doing smelting for aluminum and things like that, those things can blow up. People are in all these hot suits. It's very, very dangerous. Well, a robot, that's a great position for it. Self-driving cars. So very soon, in fact, in June, well, right now, you can get a Waymo car in San Francisco and a few other cities. There's no driver in the car, and it's just getting in a taxi. It's like getting in an Uber, but there's no driver. And it's incredible. Tesla is rolling out in June in Austin as their test bed for it. They have a brand new car that has 2 seats in it and a bunch of room in the trunk. And it has no steering wheel, no gas pedal, or no accelerator pedal, and no brake. And you get in that car and it'll go around Austin and deliver you. And if you think about it, the amazing part about self-driving cars is, and I'll actually provide a link about, I did a whole debunking of EV and batteries and self-driving. But the big thing here is the paradigm shift that will happen when you have, quote, an affordable taxi. Because if it's, let's say 30 cents a mile to go somewhere, that saves you money. It saves the amount of cars on the road, because let's say you're going to a restaurant in downtown Sacramento. You hail, and you're going to drink. So you get an Uber and you go down there and you driver, and you're going to pay couple bucks a mile to get there. Well, if it's a self-driving car, you have it, you and someone else or yourself, you're in the car alone. The car goes down there, it drops you off. First of all, you're not driving your own car. So in essence, there's not as much need for as many parking spots once the parking spot situation. And plus, most of us that have cars, our car sits idle for 95 to 98% of the time. It's not doing anything. If your car could be a self-driving car, you could still own the car, but it could be making money when you're not using it. Or let's just think about it. I think back to when I worked at 555 Capitol Mall. My car could take me down there, drop me off at work at 8 in the morning. It could go out and take other people around, being a taxi all day, and then come get me in the afternoon, pick me up and take me home. And then while I'm at home, if I'm not going to go out, I could let my car go back on the network and do different things like that and make money. I could essentially pay for my car with what it generates in income. But the best part is you may not need a car because it'll be so cheap to get a cyber cab that You think about the expense of a car. You have to have it in your garage. You have to pay insurance. You have to buy gas, the maintenance on the car, all of those the depreciation of the car itself. All of those factors play in where it will be less costly to have a car you can get anytime you want. It's very hard for us to imagine that because most of us grew up and car was our freedom, and we really have a car is so significant to us that it will be there forever, and I believe that. But I'll tell you, my car, I was just up in the Eastern Sierra, and on the way there, I went all the way to Bishop, California, and I had to take over twice. The rest of the time, the car drove itself. I ended up in Fallon, Nevada, because we're working on the car for the Great Race. And when I left there yesterday morning, I I went and I it took me all the way home. The only time I had to disengage when I went to get a breakfast burrito. It got me to the location, but I had to go through the drive-through myself. And that's it. So anyway, that's a huge thing, and with AI, smart assistants, we already have that with our devices, which I won't say the names of because it'll make them go. Think about healthcare management. I mean, the management of the patients. When's that patient been seen? What about the different medications? AI can assist in that to make sure that things happen. It basically it can be a watchdog. It can be an assistant. Think of it as being a note taker. Uh, Automated financial investing, a lot of these ETF funds and things like that. And what they do is instead of having to sit there and look at charts, they analyze charts and you can determine what they want. And these are doing very, very well. I use it for my travel booking. I use some virtual assistant, like I said, about doing the camera thing. Or if I say I have 3 days extra in Istanbul, give me a itinerary with very little walking for a senior, and it will come out and give you all kinds of great choices. I'm going to show you in a minute photo enhancements. And then marketing chatbots. I mean, that's really kind of the whole customer service thing. They're great for different things like that, and also for targeted marketing, but that's something we don't want. And this is just one here you can see. Siri, call me a cab. Okay. Hi, cab. That's where I think Siri is kind of at sometimes right now. But the manufacturing robots, oh, Siri off. So this is kind of interesting. The manufactured robots, and I'm going to switch to Safari here because there's a new they've just updated the Tesla bot, the humanoid robot, and it walks very human-like now, which is amazing. They've even got tennis shoes on it. So that's pretty amazing.
Can it throw a
Go ahead.
baseball?
What?
Can it throw a baseball?
It has pitched a ball to people. So and I was just going to bring up. So what happens is the hands are one of the hardest things to do. And this has a hand that articulates 22 different spots on each hand. And it can pick up an egg and put it in a container and things like that because that's it. I've seen it kind of just pitch somebody a little ball to do a regular wind up and throw. There might be some other robots at hand, and I'm sure it could do it if they programmed it to do it. But here's the deal. That would be programming the robot to do a specific task. But the key is, and I mean, you've all seen these. The reason the humanoid robot will be, I mean, think about this. it will be able to cook your dinner. It'll clean your house. And if you don't have a self-driving car, it will drive your car for you because it uses eyes, and it will mow the lawn. I don't know if it'll pick weeds or not, but I mean, it's just an evolving thing. But the big deal is it's the it's going to learn from people or from other robots. So what I think about is, so you have every joint on the robot. Do you remember those old 3D things where they used to take athletes and they would put little dots on them so the cameras could figure out the motion of that person? Well, robots can be programmed, but here's the deal. With AI, robots watch what humans do and replicate it. And that's the big deal. Now, the computer on the robot, again, like the self-driving car, and that's where this whole robotic thing is essentially the same technology they're doing for self-driving cars, is it's learning what a human does and do that, and then that goes to the machine and the machine does it. And it could be so much. I mean, think about, you're lifting up an egg and it knows it creates so much pressure and the egg breaks. Well, then it realized, oh, okay, I've got to do a little less pressure on it, but it's got to be enough pressure to hold it. And the egg lift is one of the big deals in hand technology. And what they're finding is, so the robot is self-powered. And it actually backs itself up to a charger, and it kind of hangs itself on there to take the weight off the joints, and it charges itself, and then it goes and does what it does. It's pretty amazing. So, and that's this will be breakthroughs, and I mean, so think about this. We're all getting older. At some point, we're going to be so old we shouldn't drive anymore. And we need assistance around our house. So think how beneficial this is going to be for things like, let's say it's hard to get up out of bed or something like that. A robot could assist you. And and it's also can do any of these tough manufacturing jobs and things like that. But it's a long way out till it's so much that it's going to affect everybody. We talked about self-driving cars. Here's photography. So this is photo enhancements, and this is a really simple thing. So this is the photo as it was taken. And you'll notice the sky is put in here. That's very simple AI that's been in Photoshop and Luminar and a lot for a while. I refuse to do it. I will take, if there was a piece of trash right here on this photo, I'll take that out, but I will never add a sky. A friend of mine that I shoot with will put skies in. To me, that's just cheating, and morally, I don't like it. But it's photo AI has gotten so good that now, in fact, I noticed on Facebook there was this the one place in Utah, and they showed this picture and go, oh my gosh, I didn't know how they do that, and it's like, oh, I want to go there, and I look it up, and the whole thing is actually a fake shot of an existing shot, and it's really amazing. So little things like you can see in the upper left here, you can't really make out the filigree of the wrought iron there, but here it's enhanced and it can do it. Look what it does to enhance this photo. Gets rid of all these little imperfections. And that's something that has gone a long way. This is a bit extreme, and I think this is really just illustrates the difference. So I don't want to, but you can see how fakey that looks. So anyway, trying to trick ChatGPT. I mean, originally the thing was all of just kind of like a parlor game. So I did one thing in the early days when I did this, and when I didn't capitalize Newton, my fault. I said, explain Newton's first law like Shakespeare would have spoke. And it says, hearken. I got to move this out of the way. Hearken, fair folk, let me speak to thee of the great scholar Sir Isaac Newton and his wondrous first law of motion. Forsooth, he did claim that an object shall remain at a state of rest or uniform motion unless it be compelled by a force to alter its state. In simpler terms, a logic, well, it doesn't get very Shakespeare-y back here. Thus spoke Sir Isaac Newton. So you can do different things like that and accents. Let's see. The robots we talked about. I mean, that's kind of interesting that it would be typing when it could put it directly in. So do you worry about it? Are you looking forward? Time for feedback. So I'm gonna go into a couple other things. We're gonna do some real life examples, but at this point, if there's any questions, go ahead and ask away. And I'm gonna unshare for a minute. Go ahead, Harmon.
When I was young watching TV, one of the, I don't know how common it was, but there'd be these really tense situations where the diamond cutter would be trying to make the precise cut and
The cleave.
yeah. And I, have you heard of, I mean, that seems to me like a perfect setup for the AI because you could use the cameras to perfectly understand the diamond. You could control the blow precisely. And here's something very valuable that needs to be done without all of that sweat that used to be part of those TV shows.
Well, yeah, but I can, because of the history of that and the master craftsman, I could see a bit of resistance on it. But, and the whole different thing is now that they make diamonds, the only way you can tell an artificial diamond from a real diamond is the fact that the artificial one is perfect. So, but maybe more to the point of hip and knee surgery replacement is done robotically. Now, it's not an AI thing. The doctor programs it, but the beauty of it is, first of all, you don't have this person with a really big hand having to get inside a wound they've opened up to be able to do this. But when you're going in and drilling into bones and things like that, the robots can be ultra accurate. It's kind of like LASIK for the eyes. That's robotic surgery because it's super accurate. So robotic AI, I mean, I think, yeah, for analyzing it, um, yeah, I mean, I don't see that it wouldn't. I can just see it probably not flying for a while because boy, that's an old traditional thing there, but it's a good point. But I think I look at it in the bigger parts of it too. Again, the steel plant, the place where they're slicing things, just uh, I'll tell you, food processing and preparation. They're already doing some of that where some of these harvesters have this thing where it comes along and the camera senses to sort like potatoes by size. And a little air jet comes and pops the one thing into a different basket and different stuff like that. That whole all that stuff is really amazing.
Well,
So
they have the machines that go through the field that know the difference between the tomato and the weed.
yep,
So it just goes through, and now you have a weedless tomato field.
yeah. Well, yeah, it goes through and they actually can have it spray the weeds on just the weeds too. And if you think about that, then there's less of that chemicals being used. So Um, any other questions before I move on to show you kind of real world and what I'm just going to do a few things in Grok to show you. I am going to pull up. I'll see if it was amazing. It was an amazing thing that blew me away, and I'll see if I can find it here. Um, Go to YouTube. Millet. WEF speech.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Um, there's no need to use those chemicals because the weeder can use lasers
Oh,
to.
that's what it was. I saw that. Yeah, you're right. It zapped it with lasers.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to play a short part of this speech. The president of Argentina, Milei, and I'm only going to play a little bit of it. I got to get into where it is. So I'll talk about this. I'm going to talk about this first. So he did this speech to the World Economic Forum. He was the brand new president of Argentina. And by the way, Argentina had hyperinflation of over 200%. And now he's been there a little bit more than a year. And I'm so happy Argentina has turned around and they're showing such positive things. Prices have dropped. And I absolutely love Argentina. Buenos Aires is beautiful. I've been down there twice. Great people and stuff in it. It really is neat. But forget all that, the politics of it. This to me is about AI. And what you're going to see is in real time, an AI can he speaks in Spanish and he has a speaking mannerism. And what the computer has done is AI has taken his words in Spanish, translate them into English, and does the tonal inflection of his voice. And more than that, and hopefully it'll do it because the syncing may be a little bit off, but it even makes the lips move in sync with the English translation. So I'll show that just a little bit here and then we'll talk about it.
Came the first world power. While when we embraced collectivism over the past 100 years, we saw how our citizens began to systematically impoverish themselves until they fell to the 140th position in the world, 40 in the world. But before we can have this discussion.
So that, I mean, we're not talking about what he was saying. We're talking about how it happened. And that was amazing. And in fact, that could have easily made up different words than what he said. Luckily, when they did this, tons of people double checked it and made sure that in fact it was to the transcript of what he said. But as much as it could be a deep fake and make him say anything, the amazing thing is AI did this in his own accent. So there's examples online where you can record your own voice for 20 seconds and then you just type in and it will say whatever you want. It's really amazing. So I'm going to go to my favorite for AI and it's grok.com, GROK. And if you have an x.com or Twitter account, it's free. You get limited ability. I have a subscription so I can do a lot, but almost all of them work this same way. Now, again, it's not great for, I mean, images it does okay with and things like that, but I'm going to just put in some different things. And what was the example somebody gave earlier that we were going to use? Somebody said we should ask it what? Who was
Apple keyboard replacement.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So on the screen here, you can see there's deep search and there's think, or there's just type in what you want here. What it is deep search and think take a little longer. So I'm going to say here.
Show your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. My fault. Great. There we are. So grok.com. So I'm going to say in the new Apple keyboard, I should say rechargeable. I'll look up, does it have a name? Magic Keyboard, I think it is.
I think you're right. Magic Keyboard. Let me.
If I could type right. And I can, by the way, I can speak to it. So there's a Grok app, or you can go into Safari and do Grok, or inside Twitter or x.com, there's Grok. It all gets you to the same place. In the new apps
Magic
are
Keyboard with
the
Touch ID.
keys. I'm sorry, what?
Is Magic Keyboard with Touch ID.
Okay. Replaceable.
Let's see. This is the big one though here.
Okay. Are the keys replaceable? I'm not going to do deep search yet, and I'm going to copy this and we'll try it in some others too. So it's checking 25 different web pages, are not designed to be easily replaceable. They don't support individual key replacement, and the keys are not marketed as detachable or user services. The keyboard uses scissor. I guess it still uses the scissor.
Get some SOL.
Yeah, replacing the rather than individual keys. While it's technically possible to pry it off, risk damaging the underlying mechanism. So let's do just on the same thing. I'm going to just do deep search and see if it gives us anything else. And you'll see it takes a little longer. I hit deep search and we'll do this. It's clarifying what I wrote. So it's considering what replaceable means here. That's interesting. This is kind of neat because it shows you what it's doing. And then it goes in and lists the results. But and the beauty, and I'll show you kind of how it works here in a minute. What's good about it is not just search on steroids, it does some other things. So it's correcting a URL for some reason here. And so you can see deep search has taken 42 seconds. It takes longer to do it because it's digging deeper, but I would assume it's going to come up with the same result. Oh, and look at that. It has the model numbers. And so far it is accessing 22 web pages. And you can see most of them look like they're Apple web pages. And it should be giving us a result. And the other thing too is if it's going really deep, it can give you a notification when it finishes. And the nice thing is, if you sign up for a free Grok account, it will remember all your stuff. So you can go back into your history and, oh yeah, and then, or you can further refine it, which we'll do here in a second. Exploring repairability. Boy, it's really going deep. I'm going to see if I can open a new window while that's doing it. And I'm going to say, here's an interesting one. Find a hotel in state line or near state line, Nevada. For next Thursday that under $200 that I'll just do that. Oh. So I'll let that search happen. And we'll go back to our other. Yeah, I think it's a whole big thing, Al. Sorry about that. User experiences with keycap removal of video. Oh, so Al, I'll go ahead. Actually, I'll post this thing in the chat here. So I click here and hit copy, and then I'll go to our chat and paste it. And oh, you know what? The links don't work on that. So what I'll do is can do a link. Yeah, it didn't format the links because like here's a YouTube article and iFixit article and all that. So
Are they doing that deliberately, you think?
no. It's because it's just copying the text and it's taking the underlying it's
Hyperlinks?
yeah, and what you can do over here is I can go here and I can copy share link, and then that might get you to be able to do it. So I'm going to take that and put that in chat. And then if I do that, it's a link to this particular one. And that might work. In fact, you can try it and see if it does. And if not, I'll keep that up so we can do it. So I'm going back to our hotel thing. Since today is April 1st, it says next. Now this is a weird thing. And this used to screw me up in Siri. In my mind, next Thursday would be this coming Thursday. On the East Coast, and it's what typical protocol is, next is the actual, not the next iteration, but it means the week after. And so Siri caught me on that. And it's funny because being from the West Coast, I always seem this way, and the East Coast think of it the other way. And I specifically asked it that to see what it would do. So it's nice that it delineates the difference. So here are some different locations, and it gives you some idea. But now I'm going to come down here and say that, oops, that allow pets.
What you pasted in the chat works.
It did good.
Yes.
So I just sent that on the chat link to Al. Now, so what it did is I took the exact thing I asked before, and now I asked, and it says, here are some pet-friendly hotels at State Line. And we'll see if it's as many. What, it gave us 5 before. And it gave us 5 again, but it's a little different list. So you could further do it, you know, that um, have a health club, and you can just further refine it. So the nice thing is you can do ongoing searches to further define what you want.
Ken, do you have one of these AIs mapped to the action key on your phone? Or you just
No. Well, no. I have Grok on my. I just search for Grok on my iPad. I have the icon for the app right on it, and
the icon for the Safari link for the browser
for,
link?
no, for Grok itself. Grok's a
Okay.
free app.
Okay, they have an app. Okay.
Yeah.
Think I
So
have it.
here is the things with different spa suites and everything. So anyway, I'm just showing you what you can drill down on this. Let's go ahead and do another. Now, I'm in regular Safari. I have an Apple Silicon computer, so I'm going to take my original. Oh no, I unfortunately I redid that. So let me go to my original text, and I'm going to say there. So what's interesting, and so in it doesn't do it here. Let me do something else because there's AI if you do Google search. So in Safari, I'm going to say, um, uh, what attractions are near Rapid City. This is when we're going back to the Great Race. Don't want my emoji up. Rapid City. Ah, it's not giving me AI. Come on here. Okay. Let's see. Where is the best place in the Eastern Sierra for the Milky Way? Oh, finally. So in Safari, this is using Google's Gemini, and you'll see that the first results where we normally just get regular old results like this one is AI. And if I hit show more, you'll see that each one of these little things is a different website that it went to go look at. And this is really, really helpful. And so um, it goes through, does different things, and then you can click on the link, or here it's visit Bishop, visit that. And if you say show all, these are all the places that it went out and got the information from. And I find this very, very useful. And again, in Safari, if you go up to the very top right there and do it. Let me do this. I don't really do the photo one very much. Show me examples of AI generated photos from Iceland. So you can really tell some of them are apparent. It's like I've seen shots of Yosemite with the northern lights behind it that are shooting to the east, and the northern lights are, guess what? They're in the north. But just like that, that's totally a generated photo there. So you can do, Al, do you use Midjourney or any of those?
I have used Midjourney in the past. I haven't played with it in a couple months. I know that it's
I
gone through
haven't, I
some
haven't either.
evolution. You have to set up a Discord account, at least initially, and then do all your stuff in there.
Let me do a Grok here. Go back to Grok home. Here we go. Let's try. I haven't used its images. Um, show a waterfall with a bison grazing nearby. We'll see. I haven't really tried it. I'm just not into images like that. So I don't know if it's thinking or, oh, there it goes. Oh, we've got spring or fall as a choice here. Pretty amazing, huh? Oh, it's funny. I'm not getting the green one. And I click on it. Oh, here we go. Maybe. There we go. So what they do is basically they go out and they search, and they found a waterfall picture and they found a bison, and they put it together for you. So you can tell it to do anything, and you know, you can get pretty creative on it. All right, so it's question and answer time. We covered a lot. I Yeah, I mean, like putting in fake pictures and that and saying it's one thing. I don't know. I think it's sad that people can make things up and pass it off as this, but people are people and they'll do what they do. But I'm really one of my biggest concerns is, like we saw the video, being able to take my picture, for instance, my voice, and make me appear to say things that I didn't say. It's it's gotten so good you can't discern it. Now, I know that some of the photo companies are starting to put in they're not really a watermark, but what they're doing is the digital information behind it to be able to go back and have and prove that that's the image that came out of the camera. So, which is an important thing. I mean, if you think about testimony in court, that used to be a big thing. Is when you were doing it in a dark room, you were really limited to what you could do, but you could make anything look like something else now. And so, the rules of evidence is a big deal. But and it's like anything else when people talked person to person, it was really weird when people first got phones and they talked to one another. And then, think back to the days where you'd sit around waiting for a phone call before phone recordings. And then we went to video calls and all that. And the difference we've had of, um, the, um, the, we get mail and we get junk mail. But in email, we take offense to getting junk email where we don't in the post office anymore. It's just kind of so it's all adapting, and we're old and we're curmudgeons, and it is what it is. But I think that you embrace it. But I think on the positive note, think about all of us when we won't be able to drive, we'll be able to have our own car that can take us anywhere. Or if we don't need our own car, we have a car that can take us anywhere, that we don't have to worry about a driver showing up in time or things like that. Um, and the ability to have a valet or a maid or something else that can cook your food for you. And those robots, I mean, they're anticipating in the twenty to $30,000 range. And, like for instance, my car gets software updates all the time, about once a month, and they're free. And I'm sure the robot could do the same thing. Now, like happens in the car, at some point, the actual hardware computer itself isn't fast enough to do some of the new stuff that comes along. And actually, they just make it so it's behind the glove box. You pull the glove box up, and that computer can be upgraded. In fact, Tesla is offering it. If people have full self-driving, they're offering that computer as a free upgrade to get to the hardware 4. So, and the weird thing is, so this Waymo that is the Google one has about $200,000 worth of sensors on it and everything else. Well, Tesla is accomplishing the same thing using 8 cameras. But you and I drive using our 2 cameras, and we get by. Now, what makes, and it's already been proven when they look at the statistics over how many million miles before an accident, the full self-driving stats on a Tesla is if you're engaged in using full self-driving, you are 8.5 times less likely to get in a wreck than someone that travels the same amount of miles as a regular driver. So it was quoted years ago that no, people won't accept full self-driving until it's proven it's 10 times safer. But remember, those 8 cameras unlike our eyes, don't have to always look in the same direction. Every camera is looking at something different, and the computer can process all that faster than our brain can process what the two eyes are doing. And it's amazing. For instance, there's lots of videos out there where someone's driving along and someone in the slow lane next to them swerves over towards the car right near them, almost going to sideswipe them, and the cameras pick it up and weave like this. And the driver had no idea it was happening until they went back and looked at the video of it. And they couldn't understand why the car wove like that. And so those kinds of things, I mean, it's really encouraging, and the accident rate has been proven to be less. So, and again, I go back. I mean, there were some white knuckle times. I mean, it was not good in the beginning. We have by Thunder Valley. If I go the back way to Sac Airport, you go through this farmland, and it's got these rolling up and down farmland. And I can remember I had autopilot on in the early days back in the 2015, 2016s. And I'm glad I had my hands on the wheel because it came up over a rise. It couldn't see the rest of the road. And it decides it should just make a hard right turn. Well, that's kind of stupid programming. You know, you would think that, well, the first thing it should do is go the direction that it's already going, you know. So, and now, I mean, it's amazing, and it's safer. It's saved me a couple times, and it'll light up, and you know, and actually, the weird thing is, so if you got to remember that when we talk about now, there's all these other issues. When you talk about a robo taxi or a cyber cab where there's no driver, and let's say Tesla owns it, obviously they're paying for the insurance. So, you know, well, I forgot part of the price of a car is your car insurance. You don't have to have car insurance if you don't own a car, and you don't have to have car insurance to get in a taxi or an Uber. Now, if your car is self-driving, there if you don't have a steering wheel or anything else in your car, but you own the car, they're going to have to insure it because you have no control over whether you get in a wreck or not. And again, the likelihood of a wreck is so low. But trust me, it'll make the news like crazy the first time there's an accident on one of those. But you know what? I mean, it's all statistics. Like, obviously, we all hear about the Teslas that catch fire so often. Well, statistically, it's been proven that it's 11 times less likely to have a Tesla catch fire than a gas car. But a gas car catches fire, it doesn't make the news. And this was all before all this darn controversy now. So anyway, any other AI questions or anything else? We might even quit early today, but I'm really serious. I have any questions? Anybody?
Really, 2 minutes.
Yeah. Harmon, you had some great questions already. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering if the humanoid robots won't wear out just the same way that Al's keyboard did.
Yeah, but you know, good question. And if you think about it, you know, they can design that in, well, and if it does, yeah, parts are parts, you know. It's so that was a lot of the challenges on this is they thought they could make it with off the shelf parts, and it turns out they can't. All these, every joint, in fact, the hardest part was the arm, where we have all these tendons coming along here and they go down to this area on your arm. Well, they thought they could do everything in the hand, and they've actually had to get the phalanges or the fingers to work. They had to go down, and they have to go down the arm farther so they can actuate those, because it just won't work inside the hand. I mean, when you think about how complex and how incredible the human body is, is trying to replicate that, but it's yeah, I mean, they'll be designed not to wear out very much. And actually, it's kind of like the car. So an electric car has one moving part in it, in the motor. The rotor spins inside the stator, and it's actually magnetically levitated in there, so there's really no load on the bearing. And electric cars don't have transmissions, so when you think about maintenance and everything, it's so much less, and they last so much longer. And they're the size of a darn watermelon. My car has three motors in it, one in the front, two in the back. They're the size of a watermelon, and my car puts out 1,020 horsepower. Like, who needs that? So go ahead, Donna.
Uh, is Grok an app or is it a web page?
It's three things. Grok is so X.com, which used to be Twitter. And what they did is they have this incredible, and the reason it's so good is because it uses information on Twitter to be current, but it's using a huge computer, and I just prefer it because it seems to be the most accurate. But you can go to grok.com on any browser.
Okay.
You can go into x.com, which is where the Twitter news feed and everything is. And it's in there under a thing called Grok, or you have an app on the iOS devices, and it's Grok. It's a free app there. And so if you don't currently have an x.com or Twitter account, you can sign up for a free account. They go through a little bit to make sure verification and everything else, but it's totally free. And I encourage you to do it the x.com, because then that same account works. Because I'll tell you, forget all the controversy. Everybody that wants to keep abreast of what's going on, x.com is where you find breaking news. For instance, if there was like the Palisade fire, it first was listed there because somebody says, "Oh my God, this," and then like the local first responders, they're active on there, and they say, "Okay, this," and you get the evacuation information. And I have to say that it strives to be. It used to be that they would censor people and do things like that. No longer do they censor. And if somebody posts something that's a lie, the entire community can respond. And then what happens is that's a way for everybody to kind of moderate it. And instead of having these, because these fact checkers that were there used to be in all these places, it turned out were very, very biased. And that really affected how they did the fact checking, and they would censor things. So the whole group itself is there, and free speech is the thing. The only thing they can't say on there is they can't do anything illegal, and it's just untoward. But you got sometimes have to have a thick skin. But think of it less as social media and more of a news source. The things that I follow on x.com is things that I want information on, not that I'm trying to socialize on, because I hate that it's called social media, because it's really become a news source. In fact, the majority of the news places use it to get their information to try follow up on. So it's very valuable in that regard. And to me, that's the beauty of the internet, is the information you can derive from it. You know, you
Thank
could
you.
follow a baseball team. They're going to list the scores, whatever. But I just think if you look at it like information, you'll be able to separate it from all the other stuff.
Okay,
And
thank
of
you.
course, you follow certain people, you're going to get a biased view of them, and sometimes that's good or bad. But if something's not accurate, believe me, the group people will say, and they don't disparage the person. They'll go in and say, "Hey, this says this." And by the way, Facebook used to have fact checking, and Mark Zuckerberg recently went with the same community model, where the community, in fact, if you let's say you put up something about space travel, the community gives greater importance to somebody that is a recognized expert in it that can respond, and then be that dialogue back and forth. So the community is policing itself rather than an individual that's a quote fact checker. So, and it's tough in the wheat from the chaff, and especially with AI. But I have found it to be it's not right, it's not left, it's as middle as it can be. And speaking of right and left, there's a wonderful email I get every day from an unbiased news thing, and it gives me like 2 or 3 top stories and some other stuff. And I absolutely love it. It's totally free. And it's 1440 1440.com. Lisa's nodding her head and stuff. It's got no political bend either way. It's not really deep, but they give you some stuff you can go look in. They kind of have some fun stories and things. But if you want to separate yourself from all the bias stuff, it's the facts and only the facts, you know. Lisa, you like it? You're muted.
I haven't used it. I've seen it advertised and amongst all the other ones, the one that it is free. It's not like Ground Zero or
Right.
a couple of others that you pay a subscription.
And it's paid for because when you get and it's a once a day email, and they'll have an ad in there, and you can visibly see what the ad is, and that's what supports it. And I know people on both sides of the aisle, and they all kind of agree. It's really nice because neutral, but it's also really quick, but you can dig down a little bit deeper if you want. So, all right, cool. AI is hopefully going to be something for everybody, and don't be afraid of it. Use it for your search, like I say, with in specific things. And what I recommend is, like with any search, don't pigeonhole your search too much in the beginning. Look for the hotels in South Lake Tahoe that are available for this, and then do they take dogs, and then they do that, because you're going to further refine your search. Because if you get too definitive on your search, like hotels that are red or something like that, you're obviously not going to get as many results. And so, but remember, you can go each time and further refine the results. So have fun with it. It's interesting. Use it to your benefit. And at some point we'll go through the Apple iPhone and or actually in photos too. The AI corrections that it does is really pretty neat. I think we did that a couple times ago. So anyway, Lisa, did you get your count okay?
I did, yes.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. And I think I'm in March also. I mean, March. We just passed March. I think I'm in May, aren't I, Mary? Do we know? Let's see here. June, April, May. MacNexus workshop. Yeah, I think I'm on board. So thanks, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free. Al, I'll hang on
Got
chat
him.
for a while.
It's
Let me
done.
know. You already got it? Good. Oh, and I'll unrecord us. Hey, Dick Warner, are you guys working with robotic stuff at all? You're muted.
Sorry, I had my audio turned off.
Yeah, sorry.